Welcome in. It's a Thursday edition of the Minnesota Football Party, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Plus, don't forget, you can now find us streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for it and download our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well.
Luke Braun here of Locked On Vikings, excited to talk about Brian Flores.
Luke Inman in the captain's chair today, filling in for Sam Ekstrom. So you already know we're going to be talking some NFL draft today and the Vikings plans heading into April.
And Arif Hassan, Pro Football Network. I don't know. I guess I'm the beef between two slices of white bread today.
There it is. It's the Minnesota Football Party. Run it.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome into the Minnesota Football Party, part of the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network, joined as usual by Arif Hassan, Pro Football Network, Vikings Insider on Twitter, at Arif Hassan NFL, Luke Braun, kid you copied off in math class, on Twitter, at Luke Braun NFL. Later on, guys, we may be joined by Ron Johnson from the Ron Johnson Show every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Before we jump into it, remember, follow along on the Locked On Minnesota YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and on Twitter, give us a follow. It's at Locked On MIN. And remember, we're a podcast too, free and available, all platforms, Spotify, Apple, you name it, we got it. Tons of great choices over there. Your one-stop shop with endless Vikings talk with local experts. Do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and drop us a 5-star review. All right, I do want to jump into that Brian Flores presser yesterday. But first, every day I go post a new poll over on that Locked On Minnesota YouTube community page. Yesterday, I asked fans this: which player currently mocked in that middle to late first round do you want most on the Vikings? I gave him 4 options: cornerback Joey Porter Jr., upgrade the interior offensive line with John Michael Schmitz, go defensive line help with Clemson's Brian Brzee, or how about a quarterback early? The always highly debated topic with a guy like Hendon Hooker. Joey Porter Jr. wins it, got over half the votes, coming in with 51%. The local legend, John Michael Schmitz, 23%, not far behind Hendon Hooker with 17% in third. And then in dead last, probably the guy nobody's heard much about yet, Clemson defensive tackle Brian Brzee. But I want your guys' opinion. I know it's early. Still 10 weeks away from draft weekend, actually 10 weeks to the day. But is there a guy right now, could be on this list or not, that early on in the process you think could not only be just a great fit for the Vikings, but also is realistic, right? Is being projected in the middle to late round for the Vikings at pick 23, or maybe a positional group just in general you think is starting to look stronger than others that could make sense just from a value standpoint. Luke, I saw that you started watching Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from Oregon. He may be gone at this point, but you never know. Just thoughts on the Vikings in round 1 and the direction they could go.
Yeah, with Gonzalez, I think his future is best served if he does not get drafted by the Vikings. I think he's just a better fit elsewhere, and will probably go higher than it's worth it for the Vikings to trade up to. But that corner class is really interesting because it does have the top end, but it also has that like a really thick band around the middle,
vast middle.
Yeah. So if you do end up, taking, I don't know, a Jordan Addison or whatever, like take a wide receiver, if you do end up going a different direction, and then you double dip in like rounds 3 and 4 in corner, like it's perfectly viable strategy, which is. It's a nice year to need a lot of corners.
Yeah, and corner is just going to be like the obvious answer in most of these mocks, but we know Flores He likes to go defensive line first and foremost early on in the draft, both in Miami, took Christian Wilkins, Jalen Phillips. Also in New England, he was involved with a lot of those picks, guys like Vince Wilfork going way back in the day. Plus, I think you just nailed it. Like, if you think it's such a loaded cornerback class, which it is, by the way, then maybe the right play is just waiting on that position, taking advantage of the depth later on. Arif, give us a name or two you're just kind of connecting the dots with on the Vikings with pick 23, if they do, in fact, even stay there and don't move down.
Yeah, I think that the strategy of like double dipping in rounds 3 and 4 makes a lot of sense, but it's really, I would not be shocked if they picked a guy in round 1. I don't think Luke would be shocked either. But I think that if you take a look at that cornerback class, I mean, yeah, you could get a Calais Ringo or a Christian Gonzalez or a Joey Porter. I think they are likely to be going a little bit earlier than the Vikings pick. If one of those 3 falls to where the Vikings pick, I think it would make a lot of sense. But I mean, this class is loaded. I mean, you got Clark Phillips III, probably a slot only guy. But he's a phenomenal player that I really like watching. And, Duke Shelley plays better on the outside than the inside. Maybe Clark Phillips does as well. I don't know. I mean, he's just a good enough player that it's worth considering. Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, probably another player that's worth taking a look at. But if you want to take a look at the defensive line, you're probably not going to be able to get Miles Murphy, probably not going to be able to get Brian Brisset either. Mm-hmm. I know that you mentioned him, but I feel like he's probably going to go a little bit higher. The problem is if he's there, I think that that's probably the best pick just because, hey, you need an interior pass rusher. This is a pretty weak defensive tackle class as far as I can tell. Maybe Kalijah Kancey, the guy from Pitt, when is an undersized Pitt defensive tackle ever done well in the NFL, right? But I other than those two, it's really tough for me to find an interior defensive guy that could be a pass rusher. So given that scarcity, I think I'd probably prefer that unless somebody like a Keely Ringo drops, right? And man, I named like 3 Clemson guys, right? That's wild.
Yeah,
a lot of those guys.
Do that. Bring Brian Flores back in. He did confirm. Well, kind of. He was asked 3-4-4-3, and his real answer was, "Who are we playing?"
Right. ...
But 3-4.
Yeah,
and that means that the base front will be important with 3 down linemen, and those 3 down linemen are not Danielle Hunter and Za'Darius Smith. That's Harrison Phillips. That's if you bring back Dalvin Tomlinson, and if not, that need becomes even more dire. But otherwise, who's the third guy? Is it Kyrie's Tonga? Or are we just giving him a starting job? I don't know if that's necessarily appropriate.
3 nose tackles all across.
I mean, that is literally what they did last year, and so that's what's penciled in right now. So if you don't want to do that, then this is a need. There will need to be some kind of acquisition there.
A lot of great points, and I do want to touch on that Flores presser, but just kind of wrap up this YouTube poll. Like, I always like to throw one quarterback in there just to kind of gauge where the fan base is on it. Obviously, it's a quarterback-driven league. We've seen the blueprint. If you can find one, pay him rookie money for 5 years, build that all-star team around him. That's plan A for most teams in the league right now. Kirk's getting older, and these quarterback contracts, by the way, have just gotten so wild. It does make it difficult to surround those guys with a complete balanced team once you pay your bookend tackles and a superstar receiver to go with them. Luke, are you in the camp that if you're running the team, right, you're the GM, you should be taking a swing on a quarterback every year in the draft? Doesn't always have to be a first rounder necessarily, but keep taking swings on these guys. Or if you have a veteran like Kirk coming off the year he just had, first year in a new system, is it wiser to use every single pick on like building the best team around him before this kind of playoff Super Bowl type window eventually closes and those core veterans get too old?
I always thought every other was a good balance. Every other year, go for it. The existence of Kirk Cousins should not preclude you from taking a quarterback, regardless of what you think of Kirk Cousins. You have Sam Bradford, draft Carson Wentz. You have Carson Wentz, draft Jalen Hurts. Like, there's a million examples, right? And having a redundancy at quarterback is not a problem. And I don't think the inefficiency of, oops, I have 2 quarterbacks that are viable. A, it's easy to solve because you can just trade one away. But B, that's like the best problem ever to have. And trying to avoid it is not an issue.
3 of the 4 teams in the conference championship games were featured a quarterback that was drafted while they had a franchise guy, right? Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith. Although the Alex Smith one you can debate, but they just made the playoffs. So he just made a Pro Bowl. He had the best year of his career under Andy Reid. And then Brock Purdy, I guess, when he's drafted technically. But even if you ignore that, they drafted Trey Lance, so they had Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Like it's just get quarterbacks. Every other year doesn't seem often enough, but every year seems a little bit too often. I don't really know how to balance that, but I think, but I think that a premium pick and a later pick, or something along those lines might be. And by premium, I don't necessarily mean a first round pick, but a second or third round pick, and then maybe a fifth or
like a top 100.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So I would really appreciate that from any team. And I think that the Vikings would be wise to do that. If they did, it really depends on the nature of the extension that is being discussed with Kirk Cousins. It sounds like there is a discussion. I don't know kind of how far along they are in those talks. But if they do extend Kirk Cousins, it seems a little bit less pressing that they draft a guy in the first round. But if there's no extension, yeah, man, grab
let's go.
I don't know if they'll be able to get Anthony Richardson, but I mean, it seems like he might be in that range. I don't know. But grab somebody. Right, that you can sit and develop.
No, absolutely.
Kind of a little old for that, but whatever.
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up because of the realistic options in the first round, Richardson could still be on the board for sure. Todd McShay just had him going 9 to the Panthers. It's a wide net that you're casting right now, but Hendon Hooker, just specifically knowing the big 5 quarterbacks, he's probably the only realistic guy left standing there when the Vikings are on the clock at 23. And then there's a huge drop off in talent. Have either of you guys looked into Hendon Hooker at all? Obviously, you mentioned it. He's 25 years old. He's coming off the ACL. But, if you take those things out of the equation, which I know you can't do, say he was 22 and fully healthy. I mean, he led the best vertical passing attack in the country at Tennessee. He's mobile. He had almost 800 yards rushing last year. We've seen how beneficial having a mobile quarterback is in today's NFL. I think he would be in that top 10 discussion if he was younger and obviously fully healthy. Have you looked at him at all? Because I think as we get closer to the draft, Richardson's going to get hyped up a little bit more, especially after the combine. He may be in that top 10 discussion. And there's such a big drop off from Hooker to the next guys like Jaron Hall, Jake Haener, Fresno State, some other guys. It seems like it's Hooker or bust if you really do want to get that next big name guy in there. Have you looked into Hendon Hooker at all? And what's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of him at Virginia Tech, obviously, when I was watching Christian Darrisaw, and I liked what I saw, and then I watched a Christian Darrisaw game where he wasn't quarterback, and I was like, hey, what's up with that? Oh no. It seems like he wasn't getting along well with the staff at Virginia Tech. But, I watched a tiny bit of it. I watched a tiny bit of it at Tennessee, and I was pretty impressed. But I just think that this is a guy that you really need to dig into, just because it's one where you can be kind of seduced by the highlights, and you're not going to get a good understanding of his game by watching 20, 30 snaps. So I like what I saw. I liked his decision-making process. I liked, his ability to kind of push downfield. I liked his mobility, but I just think that there's probably something there kind of worth digging in a little bit further because there's something that feels a little bit off. It just feels like that there's something more kind of worth digging into. And my guess is that the stuff at Virginia Tech is probably going to be pretty useful to kind of, because it seemed like he was just outright benched for performance, right? So it seems like, Virginia Tech was not fielding the world's best quarterbacks, right? So we'll kind of see what the story is with Virginia Tech and kind of take a look at his Tennessee film, see if it's improved.
More than fair point. Maybe a little bit of a red flag. Obviously, people are going to have to do a lot of digging on that background and what exactly happened there. But just a lot of good points. Again, I always just like to throw out that quarterback option just to see where the fans, where their heads are at. 17% of the votes went to Hooker. And a lot of the comments said, trade down, then you take him. And, obviously you love that in a dream scenario. I just think if you like a quarterback enough to pick him at 30 or 40 or 50.
Oh, yeah, he was benched.
He was outright
That's why
benched.
he transferred.
That's not a great thing to be the first thing I learn about a guy.
For who? Yikes.
Let's see. Braxton Burmeister. What a name, though.
Braxton Burmeister. Okay.
The Burmeister.
Yeah. Just to kind of wrap up, we'll trade down, then you take him. If you like a quarterback at 30 or 40, then you should like him enough to take him at 23, just because the position value is too great and what hitting on a quarterback can do in the draft for your team. And again, Tom McShay's latest mock draft yesterday, he's got 4 quarterbacks going in the top 9. Anthony Richardson going to Carolina, and Hooker is clearly just the next guy in line before this massive drop-off. So he may not even make it to 23, knowing you got to get through teams like Washington, Tampa, Tennessee, the Jets, maybe Detroit or Seattle could want a young guy to groom. Who knows? I'm just saying, if you're in the camp that says, well, I'll feel a lot better about him if we trade down first and then take him. Well, yeah, me too. But I don't think you really have that luxury, to be honest. You'd really be gambling at that point. So if you like him, I think you just got to punch it. But I digress, guys. Hey, that was a good, healthy discussion. I'm proud of us. We didn't go off the rails. We didn't have to cut the commercial or anything. Nobody got violent. We're all still friends here. Because every time, it's such a sensitive topic. Anytime you bring up replacing Kirk, and I get it, but leading to the draft, like, we got to have some of these conversations and just throw everything out on the table. Otherwise, we're just not doing our due diligence. And then 3-4 years from now, it's, well, why didn't we draft Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson when we had the chance? But maybe that's a conversation for another day.
No one got hit with because remember when Josh Hermsmeyer was tweeting like, hey, they should draft a quarterback, the Philadelphia Eagles. And then there's a quote tweet from somebody who had a letter about election fraud regarding his wife.
Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Okay, fair point. Let me write that down. Fair point.
I hope to be as vicious to Luke Braun as some random account is to Josh Hermsmeyer.
That was wild, man. That was wild. By the way, did you see the tweet?
Classic tone setters.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Did you guys see the tweet the other day? Vikings have only drafted 4 quarterbacks in the first or second round since 1980. That's 1 quarterback in rounds 1 or 2 every, 10 and a half years, which sounds wild. And it kind of is.
Sneaky way to
but it's actually, it's not that far off from the league average, to be fair. So,
oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think most teams are around like 5.2, 5.5, something like that when you average them all out, which is pretty interesting.
They're due, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, they're due.
They're long due. Yeah, they're overdue. All right, remember, every day posting a new poll. Yeah. Posting a new poll over on that Locked On Minnesota YouTube community channel. Go check it out. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a beat. We're almost to 5,000 subscribers, so please go smash that subscribe button and help us get to our latest milestone. All right, Brian Flores presser, just reaffirming probably what we already knew. He's going to show you that zero blitz look a lot. Doesn't mean he's always going to bring it, but just kind of like that Zimmer defense. It was all about putting pressure on the offensive line and quarterback communication pre-snap and post-snap. And then the other big thing was player versatility, having guys, especially in the front 7, be able to do multiple things for them. 1 week it's a 4-3, the next it's a 3-4. Am I right on that? Were those two the biggest things that stuck out to you guys the most? Or what else really jumped out to you from the Flores first press conference? And what are you just most excited about when it comes to the things he's hopefully going to do to help fix this Vikings defense? So, Reef, let's start with you.
I thought it was really cool when Will Raggets got shut down.
Yeah. He was trying to take a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Like, show me the goods. Yeah. Pop the hood, man. What do you got under the trunk?
So Raggets asked probably one of the best questions to the presser, where he was like, hey, you do a lot of zero blitzing. You're really aggressive. You send a lot of players. How do you balance that versus, how do you balance that kind of aggressiveness while still, maintaining your protection on the back end or something along those lines? It was a good question. And Brian Flores was like, "Wait, you want the secrets right away, man?"
Right.
It's my friend. I was like, "He wouldn't even tell me."
Yeah, right. He's like, "It took like 3-4 hours in the interview before he would say a word about that." But I thought that every offensive defensive coordinator is going to tell you about how flexible they are, how you always have to design your scheme around, the players that you have. But it very much seemed like, coming off of the presser, not only does he have kind of the history of being able to do that, being one of the few people who is able to effectively use Eric Rowe, for example, this guy can only erase tight ends. Well, that's his job now.
You love to see
can't play safety, can't play corner. You can only erase tight ends. Got it. But yeah, he not only has lived it, but it very much seems like he was very cognizant of that approach when he was answering multiple types of questions, whether it was, this question about blitzing a lot, whether it was a question about, being in a 3-4 or 4-3 or whatever. It was very much about making sure to kind of take advantage of the strengths that you have on a roster versus kind of having a solution in mind when you're looking at a problem. Rather, instead of seeing a problem and thinking of answers, seeing a problem and looking at the tools you have to solve the problem, right? It seems to be kind of the approach that he's had in the way that he was answering these questions, which I think is invigorating because, you're coming from a defensive scheme that was very inflexible, and was like, it required intervention from above to be even close to flexible. And that flexible is the wrong word for how it changed, right? So
for one flex.
Yeah, right.
You get one change.
Yeah. And then that change was inappropriate for the playoffs, right? Like it was not a good time. But yeah, it very much seemed like the whole approach that he was taking was very much, hey man, I come from New England. 1 week you're starting your all-pro at edge rusher because he's an all-pro at edge rusher and it works in the game plan. The next week he gets 10 snaps because he's just up against a tackle that's going to clown him. And so we're starting the guy that's going to work there, right? It's that's just how we play football. And it very much came across in the presser.
Yeah, to kind of build on that, the way that the Patriots used personnel, they, in Flores' years, and I think in Miami too with Flores, really good at only ever asking guys to do what they're good at, which is very clear in the philosophy, but it's also clear in the way that they set things up and the fact that they do have a lot of tools to set things up a different way. Where if you look at like the old Donatel scheme, if you didn't want Danielle Hunter covering, well, too bad. That's what outside linebackers do in this scheme. In this one, there's a lot of different places you can put a guy like Danielle Hunter that will only ask him to do what he is good at doing. And they're willing to sacrifice like variability and disguise to do that, which is an interesting trade-off. And, of course you go too far with it, it's no longer worth it or whatever. But I think if your opinion of last year's defense was, wow, they never had the right guys in the right place, like with Harrison Smith blitzing or whatever, you should be excited.
Yeah, and just one final note to add on to that. So you're mentioning asking guys to do the things that they're only good at. I think fans ask that of defensive and offensive coordinators a lot, but the difficulty there is not that a lot of these DCs or OCs don't want to do that. It's that they don't know how to do that in a way that allows you to have a cohesive scheme. If you've got 8 players,
they don't have that club in the bag. And Flores has a lot of different clubs in the bag. Yeah,
exactly. Like if you've got 8 guys that are good at blitzing and you're only sending 4 or whatever, maybe that's the right move. But now you've got 4 guys that are doing something that they're not as good at. But the defense is better because you're asking guys to do stuff that they're not good at. So it's really, really difficult to get 11 guys to do the things that they're best at and have a cohesive scheme that allows you to protect the back end, put pressure on the quarterback, cover the middle, do things like that. He is just remarkable at that. And he's like really dedicated. There was this little bit about how like his wife is a teacher. And he learned, about individualized educational programs. And applying that understanding. And he's talking to his wife about like how you reach people and how you teach people and how you communicate concepts to them. Very kind of Mike Tomlin-esque, even though he only spent a year there, right? How you approach a player and provide them with the ways that they can learn. I thought that was really cool. And it kind of fits into this entire bag that we're talking about individualizing approaches, maximizing individual players, making sure that, from week to week that you understand the problem you're trying to solve and using the tools that you have to solve those problems.
Yeah, music to people's ears. I'm sure you're getting the fans all jacked up. So let's take what we know, what you guys just went over, and kind of project that onto the roster now, because I think since he was brought in,
get caught blitzing a whole bunch of times and you get absolutely worked. Like,
don't worry about that though.
That can absolutely happen here.
That's fine. So when I look at the roster now,
if you're gonna die, you're gonna die swinging, and
that's what we want, don't we? After what we went through last year, instead of the 1,000 paper cuts to death, like let's just.
I'm just remembering the time that Miami was accused of tanking for zero blitzing, when it turns out they were tanking, but not because they were zero blitzing.
Yeah, they were zero blitzing. You could argue in like a refutation of that order, like like in an act of rebellion. Just accusation weirdly close to probably correct. I want to be careful here because Miami was never found guilty of tanking. They were found guilty of tampering. Ongoing legal matter.
But had they been tanking, the zero blitz would not be evidence of that. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that's the dream scenario. You're either worst or first, playoff run, or you're picking in the top 10. You're going to get a stud draft pick. Let's try to project this to the roster itself, just given where it's at today. Obviously, free agency and the draft are going to change a lot of things. One guy a lot of people are most excited about, just imagining this new defensive scheme, is Harrison Smith, a.k.a. Harrison Blitz. Always been that blue-collar guy, drop back center field, bring near the box, let him run around, go make plays. And maybe the deep coverage speed and ability isn't where it was at this point, but thinking about him almost as a linebacker around the line of scrimmage, I think gets a lot of fans excited. And I'm not sure how that's going to work, too, with Lewis Cine, because he, too, is more your traditional in-the-box safety. Someone's got to play that single high every now and then. Maybe that's Cam Bynum or someone else. I'm not sure. But who's a player or two that you think Flores will really come in and just get the most out of in this new defense when you think about how the roster is set today? Like, maybe one clear-cut starter, a big name, and then maybe one more just like a rotational guy or backup that you think maybe could really flourish or stand out or could have a mini breakout type of season we haven't seen yet. Similar to what you mentioned with Eric Rowe. Hey, this guy is really good at this one thing, and Flores is going to come in and try to maximize that skill set.
Let's put a pin in Harrison Smith because that one seems a little obvious. And you already mentioned it. So we'll pin that. And I'll say Eric Kendricks, just because I think that he knows how somebody like Eric Kendricks needs to play in order to be effective. And I think kind of unleashing him and returning him to kind of like, hey, man, you know how to read. You know how to, I don't mean like read books, you know how to read offenses. You know how to,
Eric
you know
Kendricks,
how to like
confirmed literate.
Reading Rainbow.
But you know how to understand offenses. You know exactly where you need to be. So we're just going to let you do that and design the rest of the defense to accommodate your ability to kind of get where you need to go. So I think that he is going to kind of unleash Eric Kendricks in a way that he was kind of shackled with Ed Donatel. So that's the starter. And if I'm going to pick a backup, I mean, Luke already mentioned Kyrie Astonga. I think that he's very good at the few things that he can do really, really well, and you can put him in roles to shut down run games. And I remember the way the Patriots shut down the Rams, right? They put, was it Danny Shelton, I want to say, who I don't even think is in the league anymore. Danny Shelton's good at like the one thing, and they were like, hey, man, they want to do outside zone a lot. They just lost Todd Gurley, so they've got CJ Anderson. They're only going to do inside zone. And we know how to stop inside zone with Danny Shelton. And now you can't run play action off of it.
Unbelievable.
Chiefs practice squad. Won a ring.
Yeah, there you go. And Danny Shelton was just he got basically no snaps ever since the Patriots picked him up, I think mid-season that year.
That's wild.
That's wild. We picked him up for this one game, and we're going to win it.
And it works. I mean, more times than not, it works. Because you're right. Like, not everybody's going to be this Swiss Army knife that plays at a high level at everything you need. Sometimes you need those specific, unique role players with those specific, unique skill sets and just maximize what they're good at. How about you, Luke? I know we've already kind of ripped through a handful of guys, but maybe a guy or two you think's just going to thrive and excel the most in this Flores defense, knowing what he kind of looks for in his defensive players.
The guy that comes to my mind is Asamoah. That was like the first thought that I had when they hired Brian Flores, because with the way that a lot of those pressures work, you need somebody who can kind of explode downhill, and that is that his favorite. That's the thing. Do that. That's the thing. Yeah. But I think a lot of the youngsters, I mean, Harrison Smith is, I think, the easiest one. I'm very curious to see what happens with Za'Darius Smith this offseason too. Because the 5 down fronts, the 3-4 fronts that this defense likes to use, does like to have everybody at every position. And, you don't always have your biggest guy at zero tech. Sometimes that guy is Za'Darius Smith. Sometimes that guy's a safety. And in the way that stresses protections, there's all kinds of reasons to do that, but it does make it extra important that guys can kind of line up at every position. And that is sort of the draw of Za'Darius Smith. That said, he's always, for the last several, I don't remember what they did with him in Baltimore, but at least in Minnesota and Green Bay, it was 3-4, like outside linebacker, 2-point stance, fire zone. It was a little bit different. So I'm very curious to see what they see with him. And then of course there's a contract situation too. I think it's a slam dunk to keep him, but who knows where their head's at.
So I wanted to ask you guys, because I know both of you kind of understand exactly what this scheme entails and the responsibilities each position group is going to be asked a little bit more than I do. And I want to kind of tie this back into the draft as we start to really get into our scouting and film sessions over the next 10 weeks, exactly what Flores is going to be looking for. Let's just real quick go through each level of the defense and help fans understand what they should be looking for when, they start reading draft player profiles and mock drafts, et cetera, which skill sets or maybe attributes Flores could be targeting in a player come draft weekend. Let's just start in the back end in the secondary and work our way down. Everyone knows he's going to show these cover zero looks. And when he sends the house, he needs guys who can not just hold up in man coverage, but needs guys who can excel there. That's their bread and butter. Is it that simple, or am I oversimplifying it? Is it as easy as saying, okay, you want a first round cornerback, then go through those top 6-7 guys and find the best 3 who are best in man coverage? Is that what you want in this Flores defense when you look at these cornerbacks?
I'd even narrow it down further and say off man coverage. If you can't press, but you can play off, we can work with that, because that's how a lot of the cover zero stuff works. Obviously, you'd love it if they could press too. And in a lot of the cover 1 looks, if you can press, you can jam. It's obviously going to be better. But if you can hold up in off man coverage, if you can run with a go route, then I would say we can work with that. I actually just did a whole episode of Locked On Vikings on what Brian Flores needs out of cornerbacks in particular. But it's can you cover deep in man coverage? And I kind of don't care how you do it. I don't care what your game is, but as long as it works.
Love it. Got to go check that episode out. Yeah. Arif, anything to add? Just what Flores could be, come draft time, what he's going to be looking for corners or even safeties.
I'll add that I know this sounds very fundamental and but you need to tackle well. And the reason I'm saying that is because when you send a lot of blitzes, you're going to get a bunch of short passes to beat the blitz and a bunch of after catch stuff. And I think that tackling becomes a little bit more of a priority for a coverage player if they're going to attempt to take easy stuff when you send extra blitzers. If your linebackers can't be there to tackle for you, your cornerbacks are going to because I think it is overrated how often we talk about cornerbacks being able to tackle. If Sauce Gardner couldn't tackle, and he's okay at it, he's not amazing, but if Sauce Gardner couldn't tackle, I wouldn't care. He's still the top corner in the league, right? But if you're going to send all these blitzes, your secondary needs to be able to take down ball carriers after the catch, because they're going to make a ton of yards off of that after catch stuff if you don't have that ability. So primarily, your ability to track corners and man coverage, your ability to hold up deep, that's first and foremost. But I think after that, you want to take a look at that tackling ability and see if they've got, which is why a Joey Porter is so enticing, right? You want to take a look at that tackling ability and see if the after catch stuff is going to burn you.
See, that screams Alabama safety Brian Branch to me. Only missed 4 tackles his entire career. Yeah, unbelievable. And it's well, maybe if you would have taken Jordan Davis last year, not Lewis Cine, then you could take Brian Branch this year. But anyways, all right, how about the front 7? Kind of tricky, right? Because he needs guys who can stand up. He needs guys who can put their hand in the dirt. He needs guys who can blitz and tackle. Versatility is the key. So can we almost separate these front 7 into 2 groups? First group is these kind of Swiss Army knife linebackers / stand-up edge rushers. And in the second group, the guys in the middle of the defensive line who are just always going to have their hand in the dirt. That's kind of how I'm viewing this front 7. And then again, maybe just a few traits you're looking for at these positions come draft time, outside of just being able to do a little bit of everything.
I mean, there have been iterations of the New England defense that have had guys that can both stand up and have their hand in the dirt, have guys that can play 5-tech and play on the outside. I mean, more often we're seeing kind of the Donta Hightower types that are second level guys that can blitz, the Kyle Van Noy types that, have the ability to cover or have the ability to rush. But I mean, there have just been kind of throughout a Richard Seymour, right? Going way back, right? There have been guys who have been able to play tight, have been able to play wide, and have been able to play back, that have just been part of that defense. And I think the important thing is they want to construct a front 7 full of players that have the capability to meet every gap or make sure that every gap is accounted for in some way, whether that is kind of the hybrid fronts that New England did a while back, where half of them are 2-gapping, half of them are 1-gapping, or if it's or if it's just making sure that you've got guys that have the ability to fill and read and have a good safety that can play force, right? All of those are going to be dependent on who else is available to you. So, but I think that having versatility even among those front guys is fine. I think that if you get like a kwesi and get somebody that you feel like, maybe this guy can stand up on the edge like Chris Jones on occasion, right? You can do some stuff with that. So I don't know that you necessarily need to separate it that way, but I do think that thinking about the linebacker and edge group as more of a melange, kind of the way that we saw that in New England, does make a little bit of sense, and that opens you up to the possibilities of. I'm trying to remember last year or 2 years ago, the Lions guy, Derek Barnes from Purdue, I want to say, was kind of a both, right? That maybe he's an edge rusher, maybe he's an off-ball guy, maybe you could do both with him. Those guys are probably, I think that your instinct is right, but I don't want to completely separate off, the capability to have guys that are in the dirt standing up.
No, a lot of good points. Luke, anything else to add? Just traits you're looking for in this hybrid front seven? One
of the things I'm looking for when these Belichick defenses do their pressures, a lot of their quote-unquote blitzes are five-man pass rushes that aren't really deceptive blitz pressure. It's just five guys line up and they rush. But a lot of it uses twists and loops and stuff. And part of the gimmick, I guess, is that everyone can loop. And that requires a certain amount of explosiveness, which I think is going to be very synergistic with what Kwesi, if last draft was any indication, a lot of 10 split, a lot of, explosion, the jumps, short shuttle, all that stuff. Explosion is going to be really important along that line for everybody. And also just can you get across three gaps fast enough to get to the quarterback? Which, going back to another interesting thing about Za'Darius Smith, he wasn't that good at that. There was a lot of times that he would loop, he would get past the guy, instantly. The actual pass rush beat alignment part of it was instant, but because he was just a little too slow getting across two gaps, the ball was out. So I think that's going to be an important. Smith might still be worth it, but when you're looking at prospects, look for explosiveness.
There's a reason Smith was drafted in the 4th round. His athleticism was.
Yeah.
From both of you, though, that breakdown, that is so beneficial for people listening as they start to look at some of these draft player profiles and mock drafts, et cetera, as we inch closer to the draft. And it is going to be so interesting, too, just to watch this defense flip, not only week to week game plan, but sometimes even just drive to drive from 3-4, 4-3 sub packages, from a player personnel standpoint. Okay, who's sliding from the 5 tech to the 3 tech on this down? Who's got his hand in the dirt in the base 4-3, now maybe is standing up in the 3-4 off the edge? Outside of the obvious, Dalvin Tomlinson's always going to be in the mix. Za'Darius and Hunter always going to be on the field, etc. Last one real quick on Flores. Obviously, dream scenario. He turns the defense around. They go from worst to first. Vikings win a Super Bowl. Yay. But let's just say he does have some instant success, which is what you want, right? But then he gets poached next year, becomes a head coach somewhere else. Do you still want or prefer him to bring his own assistants, knowing that you may have to completely start over again in 2024 and have to start all over top to bottom? Which way do you kind of lean on that when it comes to him bringing in his own assistants, knowing Flores, his stay could be short-lived?
You definitely want him to bring in his own staff,
right?
If only because if you aren't comfortable teaching a scheme, your players won't be comfortable executing that scheme. And I think we saw that in this secondary last year where we had Durante Jones, whose experiences are primarily in man match coverages. Teaching zone matching guys weren't taught very well. They busted coverages a lot and stuff. So if only I don't think you can have success asking a coach to teach a scheme that he's also learning at the same time. But also in the event that you have Brian Flores, play well enough to get, or if that defense plays well enough to get Brian Flores a head coaching job, then we've found a formula that works for this personnel, and we're probably going to want to stay in it. And then your successor at defensive coordinator ideally is coming from that staff so that you can keep as much continuity together as possible. So yes, definitely want him to bring in his own staff. And then if it is a disaster or whatever, well, then I guess we're right back to where we were in the first place. And we're right back to probably where we would have been if we kept all the old guys. But I don't want to ask Mike Smith to suddenly be an off-ball linebackers coach.
Right.
Yeah, I just get talent in the door, worry about the rest later.
Yeah.
Burn that bridge when it comes. Plus, so he brings in his own staff. He becomes a head coach. He brings a good chunk of that staff over to when he's a head coach. Fine. Great. Good. I don't you're going to identify, the guy that you think is most likely to be able to lead a defense from that staff and make him a defensive coordinator in that scenario. And maybe he takes the defensive coordinator position under Brian Flores because, he's more excited to start something new, whatever team that Brian Flores is going to be with. Maybe it's the Raiders, right? Or you've got the ability to entice him to be a defensive coordinator in Minnesota. I don't know. You might lose out on that opportunity for sure. Bringing in talent is good, right? I worrying about, is he too talented? Or are we only going to, I would rather, have somebody
what if he's good? Oh no.
Best. And
what if
because
the Vikings
he's third
win
best,
games?
he's not
It's a
going to be
Vikings
hired
fan
away.
nightmare.
It's like just bring in talent.
No, you guys are totally right. And like, if you're going to bring him in, you got to let him run the show. You can't put restrictions on him. You can't babysit him. You want it to work the way you think it can, then you got to let him do his own thing, run the show the way
you're
he needs
doing him
to.
a disservice, right? If he wants to be a head coach, and he certainly does, right? Like, why would you do that to him? That's just mean.
Right. Yeah. If he does end up leaving,
the Dolphins have done enough.
Right. This man's been through enough. Okay. And if he does end up leaving, obviously, again, that means your defense did very well. And that's a great thing. And maybe you can't keep Flores, but maybe you can talk one of those assistants, like you said, Luke, below him into staying, teaching those same philosophies and just that core foundation of the scheme that works so well to the next group of guys, and let him hire some guys underneath him and just keep growing that, next branch of the Belichick Flores coaching tree. Who knows? All right, coming up, we're diving into free agency and potential Vikings targets this offseason. But first, the NFL season is over, but the NBA season is kicking into high gear with the playoffs right around the corner. Download and sign up for FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets back. Download the super easy-to-use app and bet on money lines, point spreads, and parlays. You name it, they got it. Tons of great options over there at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn for your bonus first bet up to $1,000. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, boys, free agency is near. The Vikings don't have a lot of money to play with. However, Luke, you pointed out in a beautifully articulated article over at zonecoverage.com. Shout out T. Schreier3, a.k.a. Tommy Guns. There are plenty of ways to just maneuver and kind of manipulate that cap to where Vikings could still go sign one or two somewhat big names when, the dust settles and this is all said and done. And when you think of all the positions, I always talk about cornerback. That always comes to the forefront of the discussion. And I think we can tie this even back into our previous conversation too about what we're looking for at the position when targeting these guys and making kind of our free agent wish list, if you will. Who's one bigger name guy, I guess, and maybe one more moderately priced guy, you could say, that you would love to see them go after for this Flores defense at the cornerback position?
I feel like looking at the list of pending free agents at corner, I'm like, there's not that many names that I'm like, nah. Like, it feels like I'm into like everybody.
Right?
I don't know. I feel like it's we just need so many, and the room is just so depleted. That's like, does he have a pulse? Bring him in. But if that's too lame for you. Cameron Sutton's a really interesting name to me with man slot versatility. He's been pretty good. He's 28. He's a little older, but he's kind of had a weird trajectory, I guess. He's started as an undrafted guy and kind of worked his way up to a reasonable starting role and played well on a Steelers defense that had a lot of struggles. And he certainly wouldn't break the bank, and the Vikings need a starting nickel. They just don't have one under contract, like none of them. Yeah,
let's say they do cut Shannon Sullivan. Is there one just pure best slot cornerback of the group, or maybe just even two or three legitimate options there? Because, they're going to need more than one guy.
Yeah, so Jonathan Jones played outside last year, but has played primarily in the slot throughout his career. I think that he'd be a good one. Nick Needham from the Dolphins, both of them have experience with Brian Flores. CJ Gardner-Johnson is a safety that has a ton of slot experience, played a bunch of slot. When the Eagles saw Avonte Maddox go down due to injury, CJ Gardner-Johnson would play the slot for him. So there's a couple of slot options here that are really high-level slot players that are kind of worth taking a look at. Jamel Dean, is probably the top corner on the market, right? He has a significant slot experience as well. In fact, they only very recently made him an outside corner, and he excelled there. So, there's a lot of slot guys in the market that have, I think, a wide variety of skill sets that Patrick Flores does, or just have direct experience with Flores. but like that entire, like, Jimmy Ward is a slot safety, right? That you can take a look at, that he's hitting free agency. That'd be kind of worth taking a look at. But I mean, this is it is a bad class for a lot of things. It's not for free agent class, but it's not a bad one for cornerbacks or safeties. That group is pretty good. Maybe the top end isn't like an elite whatever, but you've got a really great second and third tier set of guys, unlike at, like, say, receiver, right? Where it's just a difficult free agency class. This is a pretty good free agency class to find a versatile slot corner or a safety type guy.
Yeah, between free agency and the draft, there is no reason the Vikings can't replenish all their needs here this offseason at that position. Go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say, like, market wise, because the top end, there isn't like a Byron Jones. That's just like the superstar guy that everybody wants, but somebody's going to get paid like that anyways, because that's just the way that, like, markets work. So this is definitely a great time to go for that, like, second wave of free agency and not be the first team to sign a corner and give that guy, $21 million a year.
But that second wave might include, like, a Marcus Peters.
I was just going to say, like, that's still good as advertised, or are you staying away from a guy like that? Knowing that
Friday, Saturday wave of free agents. Yeah. After it's been 5 days and Vikings fans are flipping out, like, that's when the really good value will be.
Yeah.
So for people listening at home, if they're just going to remember one or two names, cornerback market, stay away from a guy like Marcus Peters. Try to get a little bit more value. Jonathan Jones, Cameron Sutton, CJ Gardner-Johnson, you mentioned as well. Justin Coleman, my guy. He's out here.
Good guy.
Arif, he's out here.
Hey.
Love that guy.
Right?
Loved him back in like 1999 training camp, Vikings training camp.
1999.
Still kicking it. That's a fun little exercise, though. The plan is we'll be going through position by position every week on the Football Party, just trying to dive into realistic options for the Vikings when it comes to targeting via free agency, which will be right around the corner, really, before you know it. All right, guys, time has come. It's time for the draft. Pull up your charts. Here's the deal. I wanted to showcase just the insane amount of young talent that's thriving in the league right now. So I put together a 25 and under draft for us. And I've got all the best players under 25, including this year's draft class. If you want to get a little wild, if you want to get a little nuts, we're going to go through pick by pick, draft one quarterback, one offensive lineman, two skill positions, two front seven guys, could be D-line or linebacker, two DBs and one flex. And since there's three of us, this should go quick. We'll rip through this, and then later I'll post the results to Twitter. People listening at home, they can jump on Twitter and vote who they think had the best draft. I can't go first because it's my draft. How about paper, rock, scissors? Let's go.
Okay, on three or after three?
1, 2, 3, shoot. After three. Best two out of three. Ready?
All right. One, two,
2, 3, shoot.
Okay.
That turned out exactly the way I knew it would.
Okay. That was
awful. All right.
How about it's like my mic's in the way.
All right.
There we go. Got it. 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Okay. You got rock beating scissors, Arif on the board with one.
This is a catastrophe.
Okay, now you got the timing down. Okay.
No, we do not. Can we just flip a coin instead?
Yeah, all right, Arif wins it. Arif wins it.
Okay,
Arif's got it. Nobody wants to go through any more of that. All right, Arif, you got the number one overall pick in the 25 and under draft. Again, quarterback, O-line, two skill, two front seven, two DBs, and a flex. A lot of different avenues you could go here. I don't know what's going on in your war room right now. I mean, what's your game plan? What's your mindset? You guys freaking out in there, or what's going on?
No, we love the first overall position. There's a ton of talent across the board. Everyone knows that, you got to build a team with a quarterback, but honestly, the quarterback talent is so rich here that we're going to go to the position that has truly distinguished itself with the top end talent. I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson.
Of course, you had to. It's just like the Prince number one overall.
This is going to be why this one wins. Nothing that happens for the rest of the draft.
Right. Number one overall, arguably, legitimately, not even a homer pick there. Like, arguably,
he's the top player
best player in the NFL right now, under 25, and he's on your Minnesota Vikings. All right, Luke, number two, who you got?
I will stick with the LSU Tigers for the same reason. There's enough quarterback talent where I'm plenty happy, but I'm going to grab Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase it is. Bang, bang. 1 and 2. There they go. I got a snake here. I got bang, bang, back to back. I'm going to go Micah Parsons.
That's a good one.
With my first pick.
I was hoping to sneak him in there on my. That's
right.
Right.
All right. And honestly, guys, this is going to be the biggest wild card of this draft. I can already tell. Who's going to be the first one to take a quarterback? You guys waited. I'm going to wait too. I'm going to go Sauce Gardner, get my DB on the board. Defensive Rookie of the Year. Micah and Sauce. I'm building my defense. You guys are going offense.
I love
Back
this.
to Luke.
All right, I'll be the first one to take a quarterback off the board. I'll grab. It is tough.
It is tough, isn't it?
Just the hype is high enough right now. He proved a lot to me in the Super Bowl. I'm taking Jalen Hurts.
Great pick. Arif, you got back to back.
I'm left with a legitimate issue here because there's a homer pick that I could pick, totally justifiable. But do I believe that he's actually the best player at his position here under 25? That's tough for me. It's really tough for me to come up with that. I'm going to go actually with a history of performance here instead of just last year's performance. And over Christian Darrisaw, I'm going to pick Tristan Wirfs.
Oh, good pick.
I had that too. Yeah.
I really love him. I don't think you can go wrong there. I think he's the clear-cut best tackle under 25.
I think that the front seven talent here is not outstanding at the moment. So I'm going to take Quinnen Williams.
Good pick.
Yeah, after Micah Parsons, there was like such a big drop-off on the front seven.
Yeah.
I'll do the homer thing. I'll take Darrisaw.
Guaranteed votes. I just don't want to get sniped with quarterback because I really want this guy. I probably could wait, but better get him now instead of waiting all the way. I'm going to go Trevor Lawrence, get my quarterback done, and then coming back, I'm going to go Aiden Hutchinson. I got my front seven done. Back to Luke, Jalen Hurts, Christian Darrisaw, guaranteed votes there. Good value pick at number 8. Jamar Chase, number 2 overall. A lot of good players left on the board.
I'm kind of surprised that Pat Surtain is still there. One of the best corners in the league, young or not.
He would have went, if you didn't take him there, I'm sure Arif would have taken him coming back.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Arif back to back.
But like when I picked Williams, I was basically committing to losing Surtain. So I'm not like, I don't feel sniped, but I would have picked him. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my offensive focus. I'm gonna take Kyle Pitts.
Got no skill positions, and I was targeting him. Good pick. So you got Jefferson and Pitts. Unbelievable.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then instead of there is some really good edge talent here, and I don't want to disrespect them, but I do want to be the first to select a rookie. I'm taking Will Anderson.
Well, I guess I have to get my piece of that 2020 wide receiver draft class. I will take CeeDee Lamb.
Coming back for me, I'm gonna go Tariq Woolen. Just get my DBs done. I don't feel great about the value. There's just so many other good names out there, Trevon Diggs and some others. And then you really open the door to this rookie class now. I'm going to go, if you took Anderson, I'm going to go, just for my flex, I'm going to go Jalen Carter. I got Parsons, Hutch, and with my flex, Jalen Carter.
I don't have anybody in my front seven yet. And somehow Brian Burns has fallen this far.
There you go. Now I'm in an interesting spot. I'm gonna go a little homer here. I'm going to, and it's gonna be kind of a sideways homer pick, right?
Winfield.
It's not exactly a homer pick. Yeah.
I knew it.
He was looking lonely on my board.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think he was the 100% best pick there, but I think he's close enough, right? And
for sure,
he'll get you the most votes of anyone.
You'll get some good
votes. It helps
from Winfield at 18. That's a good value.
And I am going to round out that DB room. I'm going to round out that DB room with Talanoa Hufanga.
Oh boy, is he maybe the most underrated guy on this list? Even
maybe I kind of hope he's not, because the whole point is that that these guys are rated well enough to get some votes. But yeah,
it doesn't seem like outside of Niner fans and NFC West people, it just doesn't get talked about a lot.
He is
good pick there.
So
Winfield and Huffman. Okay, back to Luke.
I guess I can go with the 1-1 from last year. It was a little quieter, but I think he still played really well. I think there's still a lot of talent there. Go with Trevon Walker.
Surprised, honestly, that might be the SOD. I'm surprised he wasn't taken by now. 20 picks in, number 1 pick overall just 1 year ago. I got to go Penei Sewell. I got to get my offensive tackle. Wirfs, Darisaw, Penei Sewell, your top 3 tackles. I need a skill position. It's insane. DK Metcalf is even on this. He feels like he's 28, moving on 29. He was drafted when he was like 20 and a half. He's played 4 years in the league. I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. I really love him. 2 picks left. You need a DB and a flex.
Yep. I also am going to try to pander to Vikings fans who are angry about a draft pick and take Kyle Hamilton.
Love it.
On draft night, I was saying if he's there, Kyle Slamilton. They didn't do it.
Oh, me too. I think a lot of people were with you. Still bummed out. Still a bad taste in my mouth about that. All right, Arif, quarterback and a flex. You may have played this the best out of anyone. You waited on quarterback. You only missed out on 2 guys, Hurts and Trevor Lawrence. Still a lot of great options there, including the whole rookie class if you want them.
There's 2 guys. I don't know. But I'll pick my flex now. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, Jonathan Taylor, first running back off the board. Love it. Clearly the best running back of the group. And your Mr. Irrelevant, your Brock Purdy, Justin Fields, Tua, Justin Herbert, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson. What kind of scheme you running over there, Arif? What are you building?
Taking Hendon? No. I'll take Justin Herbert. I like Tua.
Can't go wrong.
I think that he's proved me wrong, but Justin Herbert is phenomenal. He might be the best quarterback that out of all 3 of these, right?
Absolutely.
I think voting wise, he's a little bit of a liability, but I think in terms of pure quality and talent,
absolutely,
he's the best out of these 3.
Totally agree. That's a great pick. For your last pick, you maximize great value everywhere else. Great pick. All right, Luke, any option you want. You could double down on quarterback if you want to. You mentioned Rashawn Slater still out there. You could go Slater.
I thought about taking Slater, but I think I'm going to go with one of the 2022 breakout stars over there on the Motor City Kitties. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Oh, you did that to me?
Oh, did I snipe you?
That was it.
that was your way. No.
I swear to you.
Now you're going to have to rely on DK Metcalf or T. Higgins. Oh
no!
God.
You got Kenneth Walker. No, you could go for like one of the rookies, and
I could. I think Jackson Smith would get a lot of votes. I really do. Everybody loves the Ohio State rookies. Honestly, it's between DK or Higgins, and I'm just going to go Higgins. I'm picking a number 2 receiver, but I don't care. I'm going Higgins.
A number 2. Oh,
how could I? All right. There you have it. I mean, dude, who do you guys think is the best player still available? Rashawn Slater? I mean, outside of quarterbacks, they're in another tier.
You could argue Andrew Thomas is better than Rashawn Slater. That's the crazy thing.
You could. Sure. He was outstanding this year. Yeah.
But, I mean, Trayvon Diggs had a much better year this year than last year, which, I mean, last year he led the league in picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody in this rookie class is going to make us look real dumb.
Oh, for sure.
Of course. The whole idea, right? But yeah, I think Trayvon Diggs, Andrew Thomas, Rashawn Slater, those are all Breece Hall. I think, before he got injured, really great. And then of course there's all these rookies. Rashawn Gary is also obviously great.
A couple of Panthers that I had my eye on: J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin.
Yeah, crazy to think about Seattle, man. Woolen and a bunch of studs. Kenneth Walker's on this list. He didn't get drafted. But even DK Metcalf, who didn't get drafted here, is still under 25. And then they got the 5th overall pick and another top 20 pick and some more exchange.
They had one of the best rookie classes we've seen in a long time, and they've got the 5th overall pick.
Like what are we doing?
Both tackles, 2 corners.
Kobe Bryant and
back.
Tariq Woolen hit on both those guys. Boye Mafe. And here's the thing, guys. One of those big 2 studs, Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, there's a great chance, more than 50-50, one of them are going to fall in their lap. And it's just going to be, if John Schneider kills another draft and he's got the ammo to do it, watch out for Seattle, man. Obviously, quarterback's the most important position. They got to figure out if Geno can bring them to the promised land. If not, then maybe they got to use that 5th overall pick on a quarterback. But these drafts, and just the young core and nucleus they have, Seattle, that is unbelievable. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just a cool way to showcase and display like how much young talent is out there in the NFL right now. And the guys hopefully will be watching for a long time, for years to come. Obviously for the Vikings, great little young duo in JJ and Darisaw, but hopefully they can add some more talent in this year's draft as well. Go check out the Twitter feed later on. Get your vote in. Tell us who you think had the best draft. All right, guys, that's a wrap today, though. Remember, like, rate, review, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And join us every day for your 1-hour breakdown of everything Minnesota Vikings. We're a podcast, too, free and available, all platforms. Subscribe, drop us that 5-star review, and find us now streaming on your Roku or Amazon Fire Stick devices. Just look out for and download our Locked On Sports Minnesota app there as well. That's the man, Arif Hassan, Pro Football Network on Twitter, at Arif Hassan NFL. Luke Braun, check him out every day on Locked On Vikings on Twitter, at Luke Braun NFL. We're back with another episode of the Football Party on Monday. For Arif, the two Lukes, until next time, signing out.